Howdy and hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you for clicking on the show. I'm your host, Don Kleppen. And if it's your first time here, this is a show where we're trying to take a journalistic look at all things cannabis as more and more changes around the U.S. and the world in legal cannabis space every day. I am a broadcaster in Chicago, and I'm a longtime personal cannabis user, and I decided to start the show so that I could try and answer some of the questions that we all have and talk to people who are in this cannabis space, whether those be researchers, professors, doctors looking into the questions that we have, or entrepreneurs, business owners who are creating goods and services that we're all going to get to try, that we're excited to try in cannabis, or people who are government leaders, appointed or elected officials who are in the space and now making laws and policies that are going to be the framework for legal cannabis going into the future. I got a great conversation that I'm going to share with you here today. I spoke with another podcaster in the cannabis space, longtime cannabis user, and a guy out in the LA market who is doing an excellent podcast as well, and he's got some amazing stories of the different people that he's smoked with over the years and kind of his perspective as somebody who started using cannabis very, very early in life and kind of how that journey has changed for him over the years. I'm talking about Joe Grande, and you'll hear more from him in a little bit. I, of course, also have the news joint wrap in my strain of the week, and I want to share a news story with you on the back end of the show as well, like I tend to do. If you haven't already, please go ahead and leave a rating or a review for the show. Everything that you can say about this podcast helps me out. However you're listening to this, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever app or platform you're using to hear this right now, they normally have some kind of rating or review function. So if you have a moment or two you can spare today, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave one for me. Also, become a subscriber to the Cannabis Man podcast. If you scroll down to the description notes, you can see a link to support the show. That'll take you to the Buzzsprout page, and you can become a subscriber there. And if you choose to support the show, that way you'll get a big thank you email from me, and I will read your name in the credits of the next episode. I very, very much appreciate all the great support that I've been getting thus far. I love the engagement with the listeners, people sending me notes and things to talk about, guests to consider, and just some feedback about the show. All of that is appreciated by me. I really love it and can't thank you enough. And you can follow the show at C-Man Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, or the Cannabis Man Podcast on Facebook. You can also reach out to me at donkleppin.com, my name, DONKLEPPIN, and that's where you can find some of my voiceover demos. If you have any voiceover needs, feel free to contact me there, or if you have anything you'd like to say about the show, I can be reached there as well. So without further ado, let's get into this episode of the Cannabis Man Podcast.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis broadcast.
Alrighty, and let's roll right into my strain of the week this week. This is one I've been excited to tell you about because I've loved it since I saw the name just pop up on the menu at my Wrigleyville Sunnyside dispensary that I typically go to. This is some popcorn flower from the makers Simply Herb, which is a Sen's value line of products. I've been a big fan of the Simply Herb popcorn flower. I find that the price point is really great for me, and that's normally what I'll go with these last couple of months if I'm going for a half ounce or 7 grams or whatever. Normally I can find some really great deals with that. But Frost Donkey is the name of this indica leaning hybrid from Simply Herb. It's the result of crossing GMO and peanut butter breath genetics. And the taste is similar to the aroma, piney earth and diesel combining for sort of a unique flavor. You can count on an uplifting, relaxed, and euphoric sensation upon taking some of this in. The excellent strain includes major terpenes of limonene, caryophyllene, and pinene, and that's where you kind of get that piney earth taste on it. The average THC content for this batch that I got here is 23%. And the thing that I really noticed about Frost Donkey that I enjoyed with this terpene profile is the euphoric, relaxing feeling without the slowing down of the mind. I've talked in some reviews about how some of these products, it sort of feels like your mind is like a train without transmission, or it's sort of like you start and then you stop thinking, like you get kind of hung up in one thought or something like that, and it takes you a while to restart there. So this is not that. Frost Donkey is a very clear-minded but very chill and relaxing euphoria, and that's something I love. Even though, as I've mentioned before, I kind of lean towards sativas, this is a hybrid, even though it might lean indica, and you do feel that in your body a bit more. What I love is just the sort of mental clarity along with those pleasant feelings. So I've really been enjoying Frost Donkey from Simply Herb, and I can't recommend it enough. Go ahead and pick some up next time you're at your local dispensary and you're feeling like giving yourself a nice relaxing high without slowing down your mind. Yeah, that's the stuff. And let's roll into the News Joint Wrap, brought to you by IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Think of it as the joint you can hit for all your Illinois cannabis news and reviews. And I really just want to point out a couple of items that is on the Illinois News Joint homepage right now. A couple of great reviews. They always put out good news stories as well as some events that you can put on your calendar coming up related to cannabis in and around Illinois. But they also review new products, and a few of them on their most recent list include Strawberry Cheesecake Caramels by Bedford Grow, big fan of Bedford. Also, the Lion's Mane Vanilla Dark Chocolate Bar by Hours. There's a new partnership between Hours, which is a social equity cannabis product creator, and Nature's Grace and Wellness. I'm a big fan of NGW, and I'm trying to get somebody from them onto the show because they have a lot of great edible products, and I'm going to be talking about some of them in the near future here. Also, some Nimbus Snacks by Royale, and Wedding Mints Live Batter by Up North. And finally, one of my favorites here, Cinnamon Toast Munch Cereal Bar by Enliven. I reached out to Enliven to talk about some of their new products as well. These cereal bars are incredibly popular, and I'm going to be bringing that interview to you in the future as well. So you'll hear more about some of these products from me going down the line, but if any of those sound good to you, head over to IllinoisNewsJoint.com and find out what they felt about these, and keep an eye out for them when you're next shopping. And before I toss it over to my interview with Joe Grande, listener, I just wanted to tell you that I've got something coming up next month that I wanted to share with you. Earlier in the year, I did an episode about a tolerance break, and I took one alongside of it and kind of spoke about what the benefits of a tolerance break are and kind of why I like to do them. I have another tolerance break coming up that I've planned for myself. I'm doing a dry January, and a lot of people have been liking to do that. I think it's great for many, many reasons to abstain from alcohol for a period of time, but as I have mentioned on the show recently, I don't really drink as much as I used to anymore. I think cannabis plays a large part in that, but it's also just kind of not something that I'm partaking in as much as I once did. So giving up alcohol for the month of January is not a huge deal for me. And so on top of that, back in 2020, I added things like no caffeine, no added sugars, and of course, no cannabis. So I sort of lean on this dry January as an opportunity to also take a tolerance break or a tea break, if you like, because I find that clustering these behaviors, abstaining from these things altogether, is for some reason easier for me to do it than one by one. I know I could do alcohol on its own, that's not really a problem, but in terms of giving up cannabis all by itself, that is something that honestly, I don't know why, but that feels more daunting to me than giving up alcohol, caffeine, added sugars, and cannabis together. It sort of just feels like, hey, you know what? if I'm abstaining from the one, I might as well just kind of ball all these things up that I'd like to take a break from and just do it together. So I've done this already back in 2020. I know I could get through the month. And so this time I also decided to add vegetarianism, basically just abstaining from consuming meat for the month of January as well. Now you might be asking, Don, why do you hate yourself this way? I don't. That's not the reason I'm doing it. I'm doing it because, for a lot of different reasons, health chief among them, but also just because I subscribe to the belief that periods of abstinence really do make the heart grow fonder, not just for people, but for substances and rituals and routines, things that we lean on in our lives, whether those be substances or foods or behaviors, exercise, meditation, sleep, like whatever. I do think it's good to just kind of take breaks from things and just allow yourself a period of time to exist without leaning on them for whatever reason. And then with cannabis, I talked in that episode about tolerance breaks and all the benefits of it. You can go back and listen to that, but I am going to be charting my journey throughout the month of January. I will be posting on social media as I go through this, and I'll be mentioning it during my podcast episodes for that month. But I wanted to give you that heads up that I am doing another tolerance break for January, and in addition to that, I'm sort of throwing on that dry month of no alcohol, no caffeine, no added sugars, and no meat as well. That'll be my new kind of take on this dry month that I decide to do that way. So join me if you like, or follow along the journey, as I say, C-Man Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, or Facebook, the Cannabis Man Podcast. But just keep an eye out for new episodes too, and you'll hear all about how things are going for me during what is likely to be a hellish month to start 2024. Listener, welcome back. My next guest, very excited to have this conversation. I've been looking forward to speaking with him for a long time. This is a true OG of the cannabis space. This man has partied with some of the all-time great cannabis smokers and has been around the space for a long time, and he's really vibed with a lot of cool people and just has so much expertise to share about cannabis that he is the only person I know to successfully partner with iHeartMedia. Listener, I've talked on the show. I do traffic for iHeart, major media company we're all familiar with, and my guest today has actually convinced them to broadcast their cannabis podcast on the iHeartMedia network. So, listener, please welcome the host of the Cannabis Talk 101 podcast, Joe Grande. Welcome in, Joe.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate that intro, brother. Appreciate you. How you doing today?
Oh, I am fantastic. I'm so happy to talk with you. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time, my man.
Well, me too, as we have a mutual friend out in Chicago who's talked about your podcast with me and said nothing but great things about you as well. So shout out to good old Dan Levy, a.k.a. Bass.
That's right, Bass Levy. Yes, and that deep, gravelly voice that we all know so well. And Dan told me that you guys met years ago, and he said that you guys disagree on how that meeting took place. So I wanted to ask you your version of that story. How did you guys meet?
That's so funny that you even say this, because it's random how we did meet, and I believe we met in the Laker locker room, and as I heard his story, that made me go, that's how we met? It made sense to me, but I didn't remember it because I was the one that did the funny thing that he was saying. That was just me being in my who I am type life, right?
For sure.
And then I was like, I didn't remember meeting you there. I remember meeting you after that. But then, we went to the radio station because we both worked for MS Communications at the time. He was with Mancow out in Chicago, and I was with Big Boy out in Los Angeles.
Right.
And then he came to the station. But even before that, I just remember meeting him at the Laker game. So my version of it is meeting him at the Laker game in the, Chick Hearn food area or whatever it is. And he came up to me with that big voice of his and, hey, you're Joe Grande, blah, 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 blah. And I was, or maybe it was even in the locker room. Mm-hmm. But then we went and broke bread and we hit it off either way. He was just a great dude. But, that's my version of it.
Sure.
His version, which I'm sure you know, and feel free to please reiterate his version to you of how he said we met.
Well, he did say you guys met in the Laker locker room, and he was telling me that it had to do with you both fighting over an interview, that you were both trying to get sound from a player whose name is escaping me at the moment. But he made it seem like it was a more competitive, kind of contentious introduction. But it sounds to me like you were like, hey, this deep voice guy is just rolling in, and this is somebody I can vibe with, no?
Oh, well, that's even funnier. You know what? Maybe that was the case. I thought we met when we were both interviewing Kobe Bryant, and Kobe said something, or Shaq. It was either Kobe or Shaq, and I said, hey, let me rub your ankles, or let me do this, something silly, and they were like, okay, Joe, you could do it. And he was like, who the hell is this Joe character, and how are these guys, BSing with him like this?
Right. That's amazing.
Then he said something to me. That's what I thought. That's what I remember him saying to me before. And then that's when he came up to me. What's up, man? Hey, what's your name? And then we just hit it off. Ironically, we worked for the same company and didn't even know that. So it was even better that way. But, him working with Mancow and knowing who Mancow is, both doing morning show radio, being extra sidekick, so to speak, for that morning drive, knowing how to build was like a common thread amongst us. So it was like that instant love of, oh, I get what this guy does, he gets what I do,
right? And
then we've just hit it off ever since.
Dude, right on. I love that, and I could just see that so perfectly too, where he's just like, hey, how'd you touch his ankle, man? Like he's just like, he just wants to know, like, how do I get in there? Like he's just wanting to know.
How come you could talk to these guys like that, so to speak? I'm like, well, these guys actually listen to me every day out here in LA.
Right, which is awesome, and Joe, if you don't know, Joe has been out in LA and in the radio space, and a cannabis user for so long. And like I said, he now is hosting the Cannabis 101 or Cannabis Talk 101 podcast. And I wanted to ask you, I obviously I'm in this space too, and I love having conversations with people about cannabis because I felt and continue to feel like the conversations around cannabis could use with a change. There's not enough people know about the quality of life improvements and kind of how it can improve a life, rather than just the kind of reefer madness propaganda, all the garbage that we were all fed from the last century about, the evils of the plant and the risks and none of the rewards.
This is your brain on drugs.
Right. The scrambled egg, images and all this. So let me ask you, tell us a little about Cannabis Talk 101 and what you love about the show you guys are doing and why you wanted to talk about cannabis.
Yeah, so I met Christopher Wright, a.k.a. Blue, who's the CEO of Cannabis Talk 101. He was doing this talk show with, when he started, he was doing it with a few other lawyers, and then he started doing it with the Pop Brothers at Law, who do the Shut the Fuck Up Fridays, and when cops ask questions, shut the fuck up. Great dudes, Mark and Craig Wasserman. And that's when I met them, and Blue's always had a great vision for this, as he's a second-generation grower. The dude, his dad taught him how to sell weed, grow weed, everything else. And when I met them, I was doing credit card processing in the cannabis space.
Oh.
So, I do the come to their company because they were doing seminars. Christopher Wright and Chris Franchino were. And then they had to transfer money, and I was able to hook them up because I was doing processing, which is like your credit card processing for the cannabis industry. So I helped them get that done for them. And then as I did that, in meeting with them, I walk into their office. Blue actually goes, Joe Grande from Power 106? And I go, yeah, that's me. He's like, oh, well, I used to listen to you growing up. I'm like, F you, I'm not that old, dude. We both grew up together type stuff, right?
Right.
I laughed and chuckled. And then he brings me on the show and interviews me because of the whole Joe Grande from Power 106 and, my hip-hop background. And he was signed to Death Row Records back in the day, so he has a big hip-hop background. I didn't realize he used to bring his CDs to the radio station, so he was that, bald-headed cholo walking, play my record, Joe Grande, blah, 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 type stuff.
Sure,
and,
yep.
The other guy that, Chris Franchino, he's met me on the streets before. He did some stuff where he won some tickets to the Oscars or the Grammys, one of those things, and he got butt naked on a car. He didn't bring this up until months after, we started working together, which is even funnier, that I met him on the corner somewhere, Don. You know how the radio stunts go and stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
I was that guy, hey, it's Joe Grande. I'm over here on the corner of Pico and Whittier. Come on out here. I got your tickets to the Grammys. Whatever. And then I had them, it was strip. How far will you strip? I had two people butt naked on the corner, and that was my other partner, Chris Franchino. So now, it's Blue, who's the CEO, another guy named Gary Lozano, and Chris Franchino and myself. We all own Cannabis Talk 101 now, but how I met them was that way through the processing when they were doing seminars. And I would do this show on 101.5 KOCI. I was like, this is crazy that we're just talking about cannabis and I'm talking about processing, and this is so cool. But as you know, Don, when you meet people and they just all want to do a show, if they are lacking the radio side of it, and you know, I have my degree, radio, television, and film, and a minor in sociology from San Jose State. So I've been doing this since 1992. Number one show in San Francisco called The Doghouse. Got picked up in Los Angeles with Big Boy's Neighborhood. Then I went with Ryan Seacrest, NBC Sports, Fox Sports. I just know radio. I'm not sitting here hurting my elbow, patting myself on the back and trying to go, oh, look at me.
No, sure.
I'm a dirtbag idiot anyways, but I'm just saying I really know radio. Right?
For sure.
One thing I really know how to do. So I'm like, after we did the show, I literally went up to him and I go, dude, is it crazy, Blue, that I think I could add so much to the show? And even to do that and say that felt so weird to do because, Don, you understand, dude. How many people go to you, Don, I could do your broadcasting. I could do traffic reports.
Oh, God.
Can you put the... Everyone thinks they can do it, right? Joe
100%.
introduced me to Big Boy. Joe introduced me to Ryan Seacrest.
Yep.
Joe introduced me to all these people. I'm like, oh, God. It's not how the game works, dog. You got to earn your stripes.
Exactly.
Get up in there. I started off as an intern. But, you know, that being said, that was in my head, and I was very... nervous, scared, had to be vulnerable to say, hey, dude, do you think I can, is it weird that I think I could add a lot of value to what you're doing? And he's like, is it weird that I feel the same way? And I was like, oh. And it was kind of like that was the beginning of the marriage.
That's awesome.
And, 5 years later, and, my passion for cannabis has even grown more, but I've always been a believer in it. Like, ever since, I started smoking weed at the age of 6. So I come from a very dysfunctional family. Don.
Oh my gosh!
It's not a brag. It's a poor me scenario. But I was 6 to 26 smoking cannabis on the regular.
Oh my God!
And I quit smoking at the age of 26, and I completely went sober, meaning complete abstinence. But like even growing up, my mom used to put cannabis in the rubbing alcohol, so that's like your first signs of CBD's. Ointments.
Oh, to like a topical.
Yeah. So I didn't realize at the time because I'm so young that, mijo, you fell down and let me rub this stuff on you. There's weed in there. And like, no big deal. Just
right.
We knew we got the weed from Vince down the street, our cousin Vince.
Okay.
So and my older brother, to give you more dysfunctional value, went to prison since I was 8 to 10 to this and that, in and out of jails and prisons, and for selling dope. So, he was selling weed, coke, the whole nine. And he was 10 years older than me. So he was the 10-year older brother to me that got me high. And then I just, I was off to the races.
Sure.
I got sober at 26 because I was doing a lot more than just smoking weed.
Well, yeah, I could get that. Especially when you start so young. It's like, how could you not advance, from that point? I get that.
Yeah, and all that being said, I'm not the guy to look at cannabis as a stepping stone drug either, right? Because even when I got sober, for whatever reasons, I've always looked at cannabis as not a bad thing for you, not a stepping drug for you. Like, I did lines of coke, crank, crystal meth, and everything else, and heroin because I wanted to. It wasn't because I smoked a joint and then it led to that.
Of course.
I don't believe for Joe.
Me,
what I mean? So I never
same.
been the guy, to like, oh, it's because I smoked weed that I did that. And so I've always had this hidden love for, even because, I'm a program guy. Who are we kidding? I mean? I did program, still do program. And for each his own, but like it's kind of forbidden and frowned upon in the program to be like, oh, you're okay with people smoking weed? Well, I am actually. I'm just not okay with me. I don't choose to because I know if I get too high, I want to do a bump. If I do a bump, I want to do
totally.
And then who knows?
Totally.
Mexico. So I'm cool, but I'm not opposed to anybody who does.
That's a really
that even goes.
I was just going to say that's such a cool distinction. I'm really glad you spelled that out, Joe, because I think that there are a lot of people. The narrative of weed as the gateway drug is still alive and well, just like a lot of the other stigma from the last century too. But I think it's so cool that you say, like, you're on the program, you've gotten yourself off of this, you got sober, and yet you recognize that, like, weed is not the gateway drug that led you down that path, and you don't have a problem with people doing it now because that it's not something that's impeding their lives or dragging them down a wrong path. It can be a real additive and replace some potentially harmful other substances that we all know people would turn to if cannabis isn't really an option for them, you know?
Well, Don, there's just so much anecdotal evidence too on, Blue and I, my partner on the show, we both are such advocates for more research because facts are facts, dog. Let's look at, these kids, these adults that have seizures, that have this, that have that, and then they put some CBD under their mouth and they're stopped.
Right.
Right there in their tracks.
Right.
Let alone somebody so here's my story of how I found and started putting this stuff under my tongue. So Don, I had 2 hip surgeries several years back, about maybe 10 years back. Maybe,
Ouch.
And I tore the labrums in them and needed to get, so now I have arthritis in both hips. I have a handicap placard. I've hurt my ankle since 8th grade. I just needed another ankle surgery 2 years ago. That being said, I was dealing with the 2 hip surgeries and doing the show. And of course, being a program guy, I was like, I'm not putting anything under my tongue that has this CBD and THC and blah, 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 even though it's 0.03.
Right.
But I'm not going to, it's my program and no. Then the more studying I've done and the more research I've done and the more doctors, scientists, lawyers, medical professionals and nursing that I've interviewed, I'm going, you know what, Joe, this is medicine. What are you thinking? For my own choice, for Joe's personal choice, I don't want to smoke a joint because of the action that I know when I was smoking joints and blunts. I was doing a lot of other things, and I just don't want to do that. But I don't mind using it as the medicine where I've hit vape pens when I had my ankle surgery. I was drinking THC. I was using the CBD. I still use the CBD daily. Now I'm using CBD, CBG from Revita Labs.
Love it.
So, I constantly use something on a daily basis. Once I did the research and realized this stuff isn't getting me high. This doesn't mess up my mind. It doesn't do anything remotely that my quote unquote program would say, we don't do anything mind altering. Well, neither am I.
Right,
this
right.
CBD that I use every single day and these creams I use every single day with 0.03 THC are non-altering of
right.
the mind.
They're non-narcotics. Right.
Exactly. So it was so fun to learn that. And now, just being, I've been sober 25 plus years. So imagine, 20 some years into this because it's been about 4 or 5 years I've been taking it. I had over 20 years before I decided. That's 20 years of sobriety. I wasn't willing to just throw out the door to be like,
sure.
Okay, fuck it, I'll try it.
Right.
But I never was opposed to it, meaning I looked at cannabis as medicine. I see when my brother smokes weed, he's a better dude.
Right.
I call it what it is. You know what I
Right.
mean? I'm like, I have firsthand hoop. My brother, I want him to smoke. Why? So he can be normal. Like he's nicer.
Yeah.
He's an asshole when he doesn't smoke.
And I think that's the case for a lot of people. And I love the way that you just spelled out that distinction between smoking a joint to get high at a party versus medicating yourself for pain relief, using things like CBD, CBG, the other cannabinoids we know about now that we didn't know about last century. But isn't it so exciting that we live in this world now? It's 2023, November, we're recording this the week of Thanksgiving. And what I'm incredibly thankful for myself right now is just that I'm so amazed every day to because you and I both can remember so clearly getting weed from a dealer and going to meet somebody in some place you'd never been and someone you just met at a party to take a bag from them and you just smoke whatever they give you hoping for the best. And now it's like you can go to a dispensary, a medically secure and clean facility, talk with people about what your symptoms are and what you're looking for, and you can weigh and evaluate all these different products, whether it's an edible, a tincture, a topical, like you were talking about, the little RSO oils and things that put people.
That Rick Simpson oil is no joke.
Yeah.
That's like the real medicine. I just have a friend of mine, this girl, who her dad is been going through some serious medical issues, and I gave her a vial of the Rick Simpson oil, going, have him go through this because he's getting real schizophrenic and this and that. And for those who have never seen what that can do, it can put you on your ass.
Sure.
There's that.
Yes.
And get you stoned as stone and stuck can be. But I mean, it's the real deal medicine. And that's the fact that when you see this, how you're right. We were buying bags off people, pulling out seeds, pulling out stems.
Right.
I'm selling an ounce so I could smoke an eighth for free.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or a half
Yeah.
ounce for free.
Right.
And it's
Right.
like whatever you needed to do. But it's like nowadays, I mean, if you have a good connect, who are we kidding? I really don't believe the black market, the traditional, whatever you want to call it, is going to go anywhere, because somebody's always going to grow some killer in their backyard, in their garage. That's good. And if you got that person that you know, love, and trust, then, so be it. I'm all about the legal, trusted market as well, saying, this stuff has been tested, folks. This is where we just, you ain't buying lettuce from the same dude that has a nice backyard.
Right. Right.
You're buying his tomatoes.
Exactly. Exactly. And that another distinction that's great. And I know what you mean. You're totally right. Like, it doesn't bother me when people say that they still go to their dealer here, especially in a place like Illinois where I'm at here, where prices are still like the highest in the country. I get that. Like, taxes are high, and sometimes they're like, I need a pound of this to get through the month or whatever, and I'm not paying Illinois prices. I understand. But it's also really good to be able to know what you're getting, know what products that you're putting in your body, and know that those have been tested, that they've been looked into, and that you can expect a consistent result when you use those things, just like any other medicine.
Yeah, and, just like any other medicine is the key point there, too, that I can't wait for our society, our country to really step it up and treat it such, because it's still taboo to talk about sometimes. I mean, I literally would bring it up at my son's basketball game with another gentleman, and his dad or mom needed some stuff. I'm like, dude, let me bring you some of this product. And he goes, oh man, she don't get down with any of that. I go, dude, there's nothing that's going to get your mom high.
Right.
There's nothing that's going to get your mom wanting to eat a pizza, if that's what you're thinking.
Right.
I don't know what you're thinking, to be honest with you, but it feels like it has this weird angle of like, no, this is medicine to help with that pain you're talking about.
Right.
Rather than those pills that's going to constipate her. She's way too old to be constipated and feeling like crap.
Yes.
Like getting cramps in her legs because of the medication you're doing, giving the stomach bubble guts because of the pills she's taking.
All these
why wouldn't you try a 10 milligram fucking gummy bear?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you?
I think, Joe, you just touched on something that I just think is so crucial, and I always try and harp on this on the show. I've talked to a lot of people who what cannabis has really done for them is it's allowed them to escape all the negative symptoms and all the fallout from the pharmaceutical pills that they were on, fighting whatever problems that they were dealing with that was prescribed to them by doctors here. One of the issues of Western medicine, here in the U.S. anyway, is that the healthcare system is really sort of this way of getting, what they really want is to get you on a regimen of substances that you'll be on for like the rest of your life. And then they prescribe you this pill to fight this symptom. Well, then that pill has its own side effect that they'll prescribe you something else to take for. And before you know it, all of us are on 50 plus pills just to get through the month. And we're all walking around in this like fog. To me, what the magic of what cannabis really offers is freedom from that. And talking to people who have found it and what changes in their lives it's made. People who lived with chronic pain. You mentioned the seizures earlier. There's a whole world of negative symptoms, of problems that people deal with every single day that cannabis can be a solution for. And changing the conversations is the only way we get people to change how they think about what this plant can offer them.
And to be clear, I'm not saying don't ever take a pill the doctor gives you.
Agreed.
I don't feel that way either.
Same.
I feel like take what the doctor is recommending, but also keep your eyes, ears, and mind open to do the DNA cannabis testing that can tell you which cannabinoids are best for your system. If you're looking for other symptoms, because if you realize what those pills are doing to you, Don, just like you said, there's another consequence once you take that so long.
Oh, yes.
Here's the repercussions for doing this too long and that too long. And it's like, we have yet to see any evidence that shows using cannabis has caused this for that long. And I love when people go, oh, look at how stoned and stupid they are. They're just stupid to begin with. Just like anybody who drinks. Look how he's an asshole. He's an asshole to begin with.
Right, right. I love that. That's such a great point, because it's like, hey, if you're going to point at the idiots and say, look at what we did to them, what you have to be honest, where it's like, no, they were idiots before that. They're just now idiots on cannabis, right? Just like anybody else would, as you said. People can drink alcohol without being assholes, but there's a lot of assholes who then use alcohol to just kind of be themselves without a filter. And I think
now it's their excuse.
Yes.
And then everybody wants to point it out. And we look at so many more benefits that cannabis has over alcohol, but to me it's like tomatoes and apples. It's like,
right.
Okay, I get it. They both make you feel good, and you could add them to a salad and you could feel good. You could eat them both.
Right.
But it's like, which way do you want to feel? It's like, you can do something. I mean, I even have cannabis drinks here, the edibles, and this. I have so much medicine that I have here. And, for me, when I look at it, I'm like, okay, if I, not too long ago, I hurt my hand. My son kicked me in the hand.
Oh.
And it was like, I need to rub some cream. Oh, am I going to eat a gummy because I'm so hurting right now?
Right.
Or I cut my hand. And when I had my ankle surgeries, it was like, I will use this as medicine. And I can't wait, Dawn. My goal, and even Blue, we talk about this all the time with guests, is like, I can't wait for it to be like, take this amount of cannabis if you're a 200-pound male. If you're a 150-pound male, between 150 and 200 take
right
for pain.
Yes.
For 4 hours of relief.
The dosage.
Whatever.
Exactly. What you're talking, the dosage is that is an exciting thing of learning specifically the way that we have such an understanding of alcohol, for example. We have such knowledge of alcohol that we know the equation of how many ounces has what effect on your brain in your bloodstream. We have the number of 0.08 because above that threshold, your function is impaired enough that you're not supposed to drive a vehicle and blah, blah. Alcohol is so normalized that we understand it to that level. And I totally agree with you that I am also really excited for when we understand cannabis at that same level. And we have like a map, a roadmap of when someone weighs this amount, this is what they should be taking. To know truly what dosages can be relied on for what effects, it's very exciting, and there's a lot to be excited about in the cannabis space right now.
Oh yeah, just like the Advil and the Tylenol. You take 2 to 3 from just having a little bit, 4 when you're like, oh my God. It's like,
right.
I need my 800.
Right, there's a scale.
Same concept.
Yeah, there's a scale, and you totally understand it, and that's exciting. I love you brought up about like knowing the facts and kind of having people be sort of, open-minded of this as medicine. I was talking with Paul Armentano of NORML recently, the deputy director there, and he had such great things to say, because one of his biggest pet peeves is when people argue that we don't know enough about cannabis, like as it stands. And I know I get that people want to know more, like government sanctioned, federal money behind these studies. I do get that. But you kind of touched on something that Paul was saying during our interview as well, which is to say that we have 3 decades of long-form studies of people of all ages, all across the country, from all walks of life, who have used cannabis long term. And when you compare those study results to those of alcohol, of opiates, of cigarettes, of other substances that we lean on long term, we know enough about cannabis to know that it is not long-term harmful the same way as something like alcohol or opiates are. And I think that's just such a key distinction to kind of make, And
to add on that, the U.S. knows so well that the U.S. government has a patent on cannabis and THC.
Yes, they do.
I mean, there's that, folks, to where when people go, oh, do we think... And if they didn't think that, this cannabinoid, this THC, this plant was so beneficial, why would they approve it by the FDA and say CBD's legit, and they can now buy it at Long's and Walgreens, anywhere else.
Exactly.
Because
Right.
they know.
Yes, 100%. And I think, again, it's sort of like people who have tried it for themselves, who have walked the path of somebody who was open to trying cannabis. You just can't deny all these stories that we're hearing, and I know that you hear them on your podcast as well. But having these conversations with people and hearing from them, just like you, Joe, like talking about the quality of life improvement that cannabis has brought you, using it as medicine when you're feeling pain, when you're feeling some anxiety, or if you're having a more serious issue, something like seizures or a real disorder. The fact that this plant can offer so many of us relief from all of these unpleasant symptoms that life just kind of like puts on you, you can't deny the power of it, the potential of it. And that's just kind of why it's so exciting to watch as state by state this legalization movement continues to move forward, and the momentum is just continually swinging in this direction.
Yeah, it's great to see the state by state. The ones that are just slacking bust me up, and the ones who don't want to really see how, every child who goes and breastfeeds is getting cannabinoids from the mom's breast off top, how our body has a cannabinoid system off the top.
Right.
Like, it's not like we're putting some fake stuff that we don't have. And it's even crazier to think that our medical professions aren't even really being taught this for whatever reasons. Call it the kukui taboo reasons, because are the government just trying to keep a lid on it, or pharmaceutical trying to keep a lid on it? Because it's been proven. We know it. The government knows it. They have the patent. Israel's doing way more research than we are. They got a hand on it, but we can't utilize any of their research. But we look at this and say, this is coming into your body, and your body needs it. It's deprived of it. And if we had more people using, and it doesn't mean every kid should be smoking weed at 6 like you, Joe. Absolutely not.
Right.
Every kid, though, in my book, should be using CBD under their tongue on a daily basis, eating a gummy. I truly believe that. I feed my kids CBD every day, some way, somehow. I try to.
That's interesting, and I'm curious. So now because I'm interested. I got a kid on the way, and I'm thinking about this as well. And I'm just, what have you noticed in this so far? Like, for instance, like with the CBD, I know there are people who might listen to that and think to themselves, "Oh my God, how irresponsible!" But let's spell out for them what benefits you've noticed from trying this with your own kids.
So for me, as I've done the research with people that we're talking to, when you look at the CBD and it goes into the body, it helps with inflammation. It could help with restoring other cannabinoids in your body, increasing things. But realistically, for me, the bigger one is that it helps with the infections that are coming inside your body. So as children, I have 9 and 10-year-olds that are still in school now, 23-year-old who parties and smokes and does everything she wants, and she's golden. She just graduated from college, and she's great.
Right on.
That being said, my younger ones, I did it because they're around so many kids, so much bacteria, so many germs. They're always sick, even though we give them CBD. But I struggle with, my wife doesn't want to do it sometimes. My wife is a physical therapist. She's from the doctor field. Sometimes she's never smoked a joint before in her life. She's never done any type of drug.
Got it.
Sometimes she's nervous about it. Sometimes she's game on it. I'm like, dude, I just interviewed yada, yada, yada. And she's
Right.
like, oh, well, that's not what the Journal of Medical said. And I'm just like, you know what?
Put the book away. Put the book away. I don't want to read it. Yeah, I totally get you.
You know what I mean? And then, but my point is, I have a struggle. So it's not like I live in a household where everybody's just down for it, where I wish they were.
Right.
And I just brought some new kid gummy CBDs home the other day. But, I'm the one that's more like, here, kids, do it. I mean, I literally just, before this interview, I put some more CBG under my tongue, because it helps me just relax not relax. It helps with my pain go from, I was always walking around at a 6-7, and now I walk around at a 3-4. I'm still in some pain, but you know what I mean? It's less.
It makes a difference.
I have a legal handicap placard. Yeah, it's a big difference, especially when you know your body. But to go back to why I gave it to my children and why I decided it is, like I said, I've interviewed enough people, and there's enough evidence out there and proof that if the children are using this, it's just like a daily vitamin. And for those who give their kid a daily vitamin, I ask you this question. What's the benefit you see on the daily basis that you give that kid a daily vitamin? The answer is probably, I don't know. I don't really see anything. But you give it to them because you know it's good for their body.
Right.
I give it to my kids because I know it's good for their body. I know it's good for their insides. I know it's good for inflammation. I know it's good to get disease off you, slide off you because it sits on the receptors. And so that's why I choose, and I realize that this is a great choice to do for my children, as it's 0.03. It's nothing higher. Nothing's going to get them high. Nothing's going to make them feel anything except internally give them a chance to fight infection and fight inflammation.
I love that, Joe, so much. I appreciate the way that you kind of spelled it out that way, too, because I think that, like I said, the understandings of cannabis are so limited right now that there's so many people out there who don't know the difference in the compounds, in the cannabinoids, and what effects they can have. People just think all weed is THC. You know what I mean? Like, they just think no matter what, you imbibe and you're going to be intoxicated that way. And that's just not the case. And another one of the great benefits of just living in this time is we are finding so much about these other compounds, like the ones you just mentioned, CBD, CBG, THCA, and so many more. And there's a lot of exciting work being done on these. And all of those compounds we're just talking about, they are non-narcotic. THC is the one that makes you feel high. These other ones, they have all these other effects, and those include pain relief. They include just calming down. They include, just a slight shifting of the mind. It's not, you say mind altering when we think of alcohol, when we think of these other drugs. CBD, it doesn't quite alter in the same way that THC does, but it does offer a sort of shift. Would you say that's fair, Joe? Like a kind of, it does change a little bit.
Well, not only that, you look at CBN, right? CBN is going to help you go to sleep at night.
Yes.
So, what am I going to use and take? And, I want to take this other pill that the doctor gave me. And it's like, okay, why wouldn't you try some CBN?
Right. Right. 100%. And
because my melatonin is working great for me. Okay, well, it's not bad, but this is a natural way, but,
Exactly. And just having those options. It's like there's nothing wrong with melatonin. And as you said earlier, there may be nothing wrong with the pill that your doctor prescribed you. Maybe that's working for you perfectly. But healthcare, medicine, it's all subjective. We're all individuals. We all have our individual systems, and things impact us differently. What works for me may not be the same regimen that works for you. I personally, I've smoked weed personally, all day, every day for many years. And I don't really do that so much anymore. I tend to go with gummies. I tend to try these other things, but I am still a smoker. But that I know that my system and my tolerance is different from so many other people. There's plenty of people in my life who look at me and they're like, dude, I don't know how you smoke the amount that you do and function that way. It's because my tolerance is different after years of use than yours would be without that same thing. So I just try and give this to people as just like with any medicine, there is no one size fits all. And it's the same with the diet. There's no perfect solution for everybody. But if I have found that this works for me, why or who are you to tell me that I should be doing something else,
Oh, yeah. And not only that, for those who do try, we always encourage microdose. If you're hitting something for the first time, you're smoking something, just take one hit.
100%.
100%. Taking a gummy, take a half a gummy at the beginning.
How many times, Joe, how many stories have you heard? How many anecdotal reports of people who are just like, yep, I tried it and I didn't feel anything, so I took 4 more and then I was in the ER. And it's like...
And now I hate it.
Right, exactly. Right. Now I hate it. And it's just, I talked with a doctor who said something that always stuck to me. She said, dose makes the poison. And that is what I always think of, which is to say any substance, even the best ones that we rely on for medicine, you can always overdo it. There is such thing as too much of a good thing. We all know that. So you can overdo it with cannabis too, and you can be in a place you don't want to be. That is not representative.
That's just anything, right? I mean,
right.
When I got sober, I remember 25 plus years ago, 3 years into my sobriety, I find out I have diabetes. And it's like they put me on this metformin, and now I'm doing 500 milligrams a day. And when it was at its peak, I was doing 1,000, but they revved me up for that. It wasn't like, oh, you have, diabetes, we're going to give you 1,000 milligrams right now.
Right, right out of the gate. Yeah.
200. 300, 400. Okay, it's coming down. We need to keep coming it down, and we're going to give you more. And it was, to me, it's the same concept with, natural medicine that makes you feel good too. It's
right.
Like, dude, don't go so hard on it. A lot of people want to get somebody so messed up, or I don't want to even put that under my tongue because I'm going to get loaded. I'm like, dude, this is nothing. This is just
right.
Professional strength CBD. You're good.
Exactly. And again, this kind of goes back to like the reputation of weed in general. Something I think that it never did anyone any favors for this is that there were so many people who loved, like you said, getting somebody messed up. They'd give someone a brownie or a batch of them and be like, oh, take 2 of these because there's not that much in them. But in reality, there's, maybe a quad in each brownie, and they, then they're zonked, and this person, nobody wants to go on a trip that they're unprepared for. And if you do, then you're not feeling that great, and then you blame the substance, and we don't move forward at all, and you kind of miss out on the.
It's really hard to go somewhere like that and not be ready. I mean, Lord knows I've taken a lot of different psychedelics in the past, and
same.
Thank God I was always ready for it. It's not like I've never just been, oh my God, what was that? What am I,
Right, dude. Same here. And I always talk about set and setting for anything psychedelics, and that can include cannabis for some people as well. Set and setting, what your mindset is, and where you are, who you're with, and the kind of vibe of the situation, because those two things, the set and setting, can completely change your whole experience. Whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I would agree, right? Even having a good dinner with someone, it has nothing to do with that. But it's like, dude, I have a good dinner with these people.
That's true.
I'm around. This is great.
Yeah, it's not just drugs or substances. It's just kind of like just company in general, and what kind of time you have. Like if you're hanging out with the right people or you're hanging out with the wrong people, that impacts what you're doing as well, and what kind of time you have. On that note, Joe, I want to get your take on this because I feel like you'll have an opinion here. So we're recording this, like I said, Monday before Thanksgiving 2023. Over the weekend, or I think maybe it was Friday, there was a lot of noise made because Snoop Dogg put out a post that he was done with the smoke, right? He puts this thing out, respect my privacy and my family, I'm done with smoke for good. And the whole weekend, everyone's speculating that, oh my God, what does this mean? Is Snoop taking a tea break? What happened? And it turns out today that all this was a big marketing ploy, and Snoop has partnered with this smokeless fire pit that goes outdoors. I can't even remember what the name is, but it was all kind of just like a marketing thing. He's done with smoke, and he's here, buy this smokeless barbecue pit. Nothing to do with cannabis, like, whatsoever. Kind of a genius marketing ploy, because obviously everybody was talking about it and wondering. But B, somebody like Snoop Dogg, like the Willie Nelsons, like a Tommy Chong, these guys like the OGs like that. What's your opinion of something like that, like what Snoop did over the weekend, kind of toying with the idea of being done with cannabis, but just sort of using that as a clever marketing ploy? Do you think that it was unfair to kind of make people think about tea breaks like that, or do you think it was just good marketing?
I think it was the best marketing. Not only that,
yep.
For those who have not heard the spot and the thing, I mean, I hope this gives it some justice. Hold on a second.
I have an announcement. I'm giving up smoke. I know what you're thinking. Snoop, smoke is kind of your whole thing. But I'm done with it. Done with the coughing and my clothes smelling all sticky icky. I'm going smokeless. Solo Stove Fix 5. They took out the smoke. Clever.
He chuckles at the end, which is the best part about it to me.
Yes.
And not only that, shout out to Solo Stove. I don't know how much you paid him, but you need to give him more.
Yep.
Because Snoop earned everything by doing the way he did it. Even when it came out, I went,
Mm-hmm.
I had a trick up my sleeve, feeling like there's just no way.
Yep.
Right? And
yep.
That's just how I was feeling. I'm not going to say I was, and I was like, and I've met Snoop several times. We've had the Death Row Cannabis on our show.
Oh, right on.
Like Snoop and I have gone, like I've shaved my head because losing and playing video games with Snoop. I mean, we go way back, like 4 or 5.
Really? What was the game? Do you remember?
We played NBA Live, or not NBA Live, whatever basketball was back then.
2K, one of those.
Yeah, 2K, I believe, whatever it was.
Yeah.
NBA Live. Yeah, one of the basketball games, and if I won, I got to shave off one of his braids. If he won, we shaved my hair off, and I lost. And
Oh my God!
Point is, like, I have so many other stories with him. Seeing him here or there, being at the Lakers three-peat championship, taking a picture of him and Nate Dogg together that I printed out for him, and all the good stuff. I mean, we go back like boys and kick it. And we did some things at this G4 Live Cannabis event that we booked him at for G4 Live out in Vegas, which was another cannabis function. So that being said, I have, a long relationship with this guy and been in the room. Here's a good one where he hands me, after the movie The Wash, it's me, Snoop, Dr. Dre, and the Bishop Don Magic Wand, and the blunts going in a circle like that. Mind you though, Don, it was Dr. Dre hands me the blunt, and then I hand it to Snoop, and it was like so crazy to think I didn't even hit it though. I'm already sober.
Right, that's what I was just gonna ask. I was like, was this at the time you were already sober? So they passed it to you, and you just passed it, but you were still in that circle of like OG smokers.
And I had to grab it. Like most of the times, I usually go, I'm cool, and I don't even touch it.
Right.
This time I go, no, let me grab it.
Of course, you've got to. It's like, what am I gonna do? Reject Dr. Dre?
How about this one? Yeah, how about this? I was smoking blunts 3 days before me and Biggie Smalls, so me and Biggie go back like that. I was smoking blunts with him because that's when I was partying back then.
Oh, Biggie Smalls. So you used to smoke with him.
Picture of me and Notorious. I mean,
please do. So
you'll be able to see that,
dude. So okay, so you obviously, I mean, you're smoking with these classics. So that means you're saying that you knew that there was something up with Snoop's announcement. You knew there was something not right with that.
I had a hunch up my sleeve and had a good strong feeling because I would have felt like I would have caught a little wind about it. I mean, there's other cats that are real close to him that I'm close to.
Yeah.
Some like people that aren't like in front of the main, like whoop whoop about everything, that would have probably given me a heads up. I mean, just to give you an idea, me and Blue have death row chains. You know what I mean? I mean, in with these guys.
Yeah.
Like and Blue used to be signed to Death Row Records. It's how we got him. I've done a lot of things with these guys. So I didn't believe it for whatever reason it was. Because the way he said it. It was the way he said it was just.
It was the way he said it, and there was a statement at the end of like the Instagram post that was like, "Please respect my family and my privacy at this time." It was like too. Like it was too tragic, like it was taken too seriously for a moment.
I felt like I needed some crackers because it was too damn cheesy for Snoop to say some shit like that.
Exactly. You could almost smell the marketing there, and
I was like, it's cool, but. Nah.
Right. Tea breaks are fine. I'm all for them. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But like, why would someone who has never expressed any interest in stopping for any length of time, why would he just up and announce something like that? Now we know that's obviously a big deal. But
and you don't say I'm cool with smoke. You say I'm cool with smoking weed.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Let me ask you too. You mentioned Biggie Smalls. Recently, just this year, we finally had some movement on the Tupac Shakur murder from back in the 90s. We finally had somebody who actually, has gone to jail for this. They say it wasn't the guy that pulled the trigger, but it was like the uncle of that guy who was in the car. Again, maybe you have no thoughts on this whatsoever, but as somebody who was in that space in LA at this time, what are your thoughts on that? And like, did you ever have a chance to smoking with Biggie? Did you ever meet Pac? And did you, what was the weed scene like in LA at that time?
So at that time when he was passed, I was doing morning radio in the Bay Area. But yes, I did meet Pac as well. It's funny because we just had Money B from Digital Underground on our podcast, Cannabis Talk 101, and I brought up the story of, I go, dude, every time I tell people when I met Pac, I go, it's so funny that I see you right now, but it takes me back to this picture I have. I go, let me show you the picture, and I have it up in the office, and it's me, Shock G, rest in peace, and Money B, and some other cats from the crew there, right? And I go, I always thought, B, that Pac was here at this moment when you guys came for this interview, and that's where I met him. That's in my head where it was. And he looks at the picture and he goes, he starts naming people, and he goes, I bet you Pac took that picture.
Oh,
like, no way. That's even crazier.
That is crazy.
So, right, because this was the young Digital Underground days, and he always respected the fact when he was with Digital Underground that, it's Digital Underground. And he wasn't the Tupac when I met him first.
Yeah.
But I mean, and nor did I go smoking with them and drink with them. And I partied actually more with Digital Underground because we used to do things in San Francisco when we do our Doghouse live events, and it'd be awesome. And a lot of other artists that I party with, but I never party with him. I mean, I go as far back as partying with like the Sugar Hill Gang, dog. I said a hip.
Man. That's awesome, man. That is really great, man. Joe, I just, this has been such a great talk. I could talk with you all day about cannabis, and I can't thank you enough for just kind of stopping by and sharing your perspective with us and some of these great stories that, listener, you can certainly hear more of all the time on Cannabis Talk 101, Joe's podcast with Blue, as he mentioned, which is on the iHeartRadio network. Joe Grande, thank you so much, man. Really loved getting to talk with you today.
Well, Don, it's a pleasure, and I can't wait to air this on our broadcast as well, so the listeners can enjoy what they have from you as well. And if they ever want to go check out your podcast, Cannabis Man Podcast. So I tell listeners, we like to have people on of all sorts because there's room for everyone. So everyone go listen to that as well.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, that's awesome, man. You take care.
All right, brother. Have a good day.
And there you have it, listener. I want to thank again my guest, Joe Grande. What an excellent conversation to have with him. Such great perspective. I mean, all of us, I think, who started, we all have an origin story from when cannabis came into our lives, for sure. But I doubt any of us had it come into our lives as early as 6 years old. It's incredible to me that Joe has been able to get his life in such a great place as it is here with such early exposure to this. And I'm a cannabis proponent, but I think anything that's exposed to a child that young could be potentially problematic, and I'm just so thrilled that Joe is doing the great stuff that he is on the Cannabis Talk 101 podcast. He and Blue, they always have such great topics like health and wellness and what cannabis can bring to your life, the relationship between weed and the bedroom, and kind of how it can help in terms of relationship stuff. It's a wealth of information, and they have the Cannabis Talk magazine as well. So if you're interested in more about this, you can head to CannabisTalk101.com or head to the iHeartRadio app and just subscribe to their podcast that way. Cannot recommend it enough. These guys are doing great stuff, and I look forward to continuing to talk with them down the line in the future as we're all keeping an eye on this cannabis space as everything's changing all the time. A final note to bring to your attention, listener. I saw a story this week, the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, that would be the MORE Act, which I have discussed on this podcast earlier in the year. It gained 3 new sponsors this week, and now its total number is 79, and that would be 37% of all Democrats in the House of Representatives. More than a third of the House now supports the MORE Act. It was filed originally by Representative Jerry Nadler, and he describes it as one of the most comprehensive marijuana reform bills ever introduced in the U.S. Congress. The measure would decriminalize cannabis at the federal level and remove it entirely as a controlled substance while establishing a federal cannabis tax that would apply to legal cannabis states. I swapped out cannabis for marijuana several instances there. The MORE Act would place a 5% excise tax on legal cannabis sales for the first 2 years, increasing it to 8% by the 5th year. I think any of us in Illinois would be thrilled with 5 or 8% in terms of a flat tax on cannabis products. Now, we've talked about this on the show as well, what's likely to happen with the federal decriminalization or rescheduling. They're never going to federally legalize cannabis. What they'll do is they will decriminalize it and then just get out of the way and let states do what they want to do. But the MORE Act being supported by over a third of the House is noteworthy because it just shows that the growing wave of support among the American populace, it's now being reflected in our political bodies. I mean, the House of Representatives, even though it's not a perfect, as we know, it's not a perfect representation of what people actually want, but the fact that they are now reflecting this wide support for legal cannabis, this is only going to continue. And again, we keep talking about when the dam is going to break. This is just another sort of breadcrumb on that trail to that inevitability, which I believe it is, and I'm sure you do as well. well. So I will link that in the show description notes. I encourage you to go read the rest of it. Next week, I've got a conversation with somebody who is bringing a very popular cannabis edible brand back to Illinois after wild success in the state a few years ago. But then after their partnership expired with the company here, they were out of the market, and people have been clamoring for them to come back, and they're finally back in Illinois. I'm talking about Betty's Eddies, the edible company. They've got fruit chews, they've got other brands of baked goods, and they've got some other things like concentrates and flour coming out later in the year. So it's a big splashy return for Betty's Eddies back into Illinois. I'm going to be talking with Ryan Crandall, who created the brand, and I've got that for you next week. In the meantime, be sure to become a subscriber to the Cannabis Man podcast. Scroll down and hit that support the show link, and you can always follow the show at C-Man Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I really appreciate all the kind words. Keep the ratings and reviews coming, and do tell your friends about the Cannabis Man podcast. Any kind of helping of spreading the word is very much appreciated on my part. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you, listener, and we'll talk again next week on the Cannabis Man podcast. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Goodson.